You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. On the screen right now is Typhoon Chaba, which made landfall in the hours of this morning, during the day local time over there in China. And you can see just about where it made landfall. This is imagery progression of what happened after we went off the air last night, at the end of our tropical weather bulletin, and how the storm progressed since then. And it's moving inland now. Still a typhoon for the time being, probably not for much longer. Massive, by the way. Its influence extends as far north as Wuhan and as far west as Hanoi in Vietnam. And we are expecting massive amounts of rain from this storm. Now, you've seen on the headline, or on our thumbnail today, that we've got 4 cyclones active now. So we're going to try and keep equal coverage on all of them if we can, to the best of our ability, and go over what else we've got. So here's a wide shot of the Western Pacific showing the other system, Aere, which is just about making landfall on Okinawa this hour, although it looks absolutely dreadful, it has to be said. And it now appears it's going to be on its way out very soon indeed, and probably won't make it to either the main islands of Japan or the Korean peninsula, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Let's try this imagery. I'm not sure what's going to show up on this, but it should be Bonnie. There it is, and it's just moved now into the Eastern Pacific. So its life begins a new chapter after dumping lots of heavy rainfall over Nicaragua and northern Costa Rica, which has likely caused significant flash flooding, although I don't have any specifics on that. But yep, you can see it just fine there. And let me try and get to my next image, which actually I don't have because I've not prepared well enough. But somewhere else in the Atlantic is a lesser spotted tropical storm Colin, which formed earlier this morning. National Hurricane Center have issued tropical storm warnings for that, and I'll get to that in a moment. First, we can take a look at the National Hurricane Center's latest forecast track on Bonnie. There it is right now. And expected to become a hurricane later on in that period, towards the end of that 5-day period. And because it is important on the US East Coast, we've got to see what that track forecast for Colin looks like. And there it is. National Hurricane Center have it inland. They expect it will survive as a tropical storm for a couple of days. Whether it is a tropical storm or not, perhaps a little bit of doubt in that. But like we did in 2016, funnily enough, we are running with the official line on that whilst we are live. But there is Colin right now, 40 mile per hour winds, moving northeast at 8. Okay, well, back in the studio, my name is Nathan Foy here once again, doing more live coverage. 2 streams a day we're on at the moment, and it looks like there's going to be a live tropical weather bulletin tonight once again. And I'm joined by my team, which we'll be able to look at in a moment, once I get everything loaded up properly. And today we have with us Christian there, Farhan, we also have Jose and Declan there as well. Hello to all of you today.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon morning. Indeed. Yep, all morning. I'll get up some imagery of Colin shortly on my software, which is probably going to completely destroy my machine again like it's done the last 3 times. But oh well. And we'll be able to take a look at some close-up satellite imagery of what Colin is up to. And like we say, we've got so many different things to cover right now. There is a lot going on. And as a matter of fact, it's all broken down at my end already. Well, not broken, but it just is not allowing me to look at satellite imagery, which is great. So if any of you guys can show up imagery of Colin, that's something that I'm going to be lacking during this stream today.
I can on tropical Tibet.
We'll take a look at that shortly. Switching to this imagery of Bonnie, it took a while to move offshore, the coast of Central America. There it is once again on that satellite imagery. As always, if you've got comments or questions for us during our stream today, we're probably going to stay here for the hour. And we've got plenty to talk about. You can tag us by... what was that? You can start your message with Force 13 all in text in the chat section and it will light up for us. Just noticed there that a comment about how the last streamers didn't get a Hone joke because Elsa froze it all. Oh dear. That is actually ironically true though, with what happened on our last live event. So, I believe warnings are still in effect for Bonnie right now. They're being stayed in place for a little while longer. Still on the east coast actually as well. They've got those warnings still out there. So tropical storm warning for Limon, Costa Rica northward to Sandy Bay, Serpi, Nicaragua, Cabo Blanco, Costa Rica northward to the border of Nicaragua and Honduras. Interests along the Pacific coast of El Salvador, Guatemala and southern Mexico should monitor the progress of Bonnie. A lot of rustling going on in the background there. Looking at the eastern Pacific view, and you can see the wider shot of everything that's going on. Bonnie lost a bit of its convection when it was moving inland, and now it's starting to emerge again. It's blowing up a little bit more. You remember that tropical disturbance we were looking at well out over the eastern Pacific? That is looking, well, it's gone, so that's not going to form now either. So Bonnie will be the main feature in the eastern Pacific. Just to bring a note on what the warnings are for Colin right now, and they are a tropical storm warning for South Santee River, South Carolina, to Duck in North Carolina, and the Pamlico Sound. I'm going to switch tabs and get some imagery of Colin in just a moment so that we can properly take a look on the true color imagery. So team, whilst we're looking at all of these things going on right now, well, let's talk to Farhan first, because it's been a long while since you were last on one of our streams and it's nice to see you again. What would you like to discuss primarily today?
Yeah, indeed, it has been a long time because of my university work. It's actually going to be my final soon, but I don't really want to think about it too much. But yeah, in terms of what actually is going on, the storms in the Western Pacific, of course, we like to think of all the usual bells and whistles of the negative impact. But there is a positive side to this, which is that China and Japan, although I will preface this by saying I don't know how it is in the area that is specifically getting impacted by Chaba and Aere specifically, but generally China and Japan is currently suffering from the worst heat wave that has struck the region since 1875, and I think more than a few people would have welcomed the coming of a bit of rain, a bit of a cool atmosphere with the coming of this storm, at least for a day or two, with these two storms to give them a bit of respite from the intensive heat they have been feeling over the last week or so. And also, I guess the last thing that I wanted to mention is that I thought I was going to come into the stream saying, well, it's nice to be coming into a stream and the Atlantic is not ahead of every other basins. Well, it was going to be correct until Colin forms, and now the Atlantic is pretty much equal again with the Eastern Pacific and the Western Pacific, so that's a moot point now. But yeah,
All right.
it's a busy time in the Northern Hemisphere now.
Let's see how contentious this is with our team right now. What are we thinking of Colin as we look at it on our satellite imagery this morning?
I don't know. I haven't seen much of it because I've been busy throughout most of the morning.
Okay, so Christian's busy.
Where's the circulation, first of all? I can't see where it is.
Well, I believe it's inland.
It's on there, yeah.
Somewhere. But the more I look at it, the more I'm actually struggling to see such a circulation anymore. We were tracking it last night, and we saw this circulation that was just passing by Charleston, and it was about to move inland. But and that was definitely a circulation, although the convective pattern was absolutely abominable. I don't know whether it's been a truly tropical cyclone over this period, and people who know our history will know that we've already had one bone of contention that lasted a very long time with the last Colin. So we're not being biased or anything like that. We look at what we see. I don't think it's a TC right now, but earlier on today, I've not really had much chance to take a look at what it looked like in the early hours of this morning when the National Hurricane Center first designated it, and so perhaps the argument was better back then.
I don't know about that.
Hmm.
It seems... I don't know. It's hard to say.
Jose, what do you think?
Well, what I think it's basically 2016 all over again. If you want to know
don't.
what I really want to say, that's what I want to say. If you really want to know.
Well, you've said it. Jose, what do you think?
I was just say that this to me does not look like a tropical storm because most of the convection are offshore. So, yeah.
All right, Declan, how about you?
Same. Most of the convection is basically offshore. This morning, when they first designated it, it looked better than this.
Right.
There was some convection around the center, but that's since backed off.
It is well displaced to the southern side of this storm, and little doubt that it has tropical storm force winds. ASCAT caught that earlier on this morning with 40 mile per hour winds. But the big bone of contention I really have is whether the circulation is strong enough right now and how far away that convection is from the center, which is pretty far at this point. And we're going to have to try and get some imagery of what it looked like earlier on so we can formulate a proper opinion on how it was during the whole time. So I'm going to try and get that up here. But if you want your thoughts on how Colin has been doing and what you thought of it earlier today, please get in touch. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, whether we're being too cruel about Colin once again like we did last time, or whether you think we're right on that. Do let us know. In fact, we've got it here, so let's try and get this up and running. This was some imagery from earlier on, a longer loop to show you the whole progress of Colin during this time. And as you can see, a very messy storm from start to eventual finish by the looks of things. Better than it was yesterday when it was when the circulation was there about to move inland. I mean, you can see where the circulation is still. It's just like I'm just not sure it's very strong at all. But there we go. That's Colin for you. Let's take a look at some more imagery. Excuse me. This is another look at the Gulf, not the Gulf, the Caribbean Sea, and showing how interesting that area of interest is looking. If that's not even up to date. Hold on. Right. For some reason that is completely out of date. Let's try and get an up-to-date version. In the meantime, we'll look at that imagery there of the Western Pacific once again. Oh, here we are. Okay, so that system, it's still trying its best actually with that convection. National Hurricane Center still have a low chance out for it. I think it's still 10% in the Eastern Caribbean Sea. Back to the Western Pacific though, and you can see the whole picture, almost the whole picture. It's sort of moving off towards the northern side there, and Chaba is still the main story. Red typhoon warnings are still in effect for large chunks of Guangdong province in southern China. As a matter of fact, just trying to get some specifics on warning areas. I mean, basically all of the area that's been affected by the landfall of the storm, obviously. You have got some orange warnings extending as far east as... Go try and get my bearings with locations in China, which I'm not particularly familiar with. Yangjiang, certainly in the orange, if not red, I'm not sure there. As far east as... just looking for a place. I think it's Shurikosen, which is also in the orange. And as far... This warning map is horribly incomplete, but you get the idea that rainfall is going to be a predominant threat from Chaba, but of course strong winds there where it's made landfall. Very close to Maoming, if my eyes aren't deceiving me. Christian, what are your thoughts this morning as you wake up to all of this activity?
Well, where do I even begin?
Wherever you want to.
Alright, we'll start with Chaba and Aere. Basically, they both made landfall. Chaba over somewhere in China, I forget the exact location. Aere in Okinawa. I believe Chaba was a Category 1 equivalent typhoon.
I think it was 85 at peak they went with.
85, what, knots or miles an hour?
In miles an hour.
Yeah, okay. Aere is still tropical storm.
It's looking woeful.
Looking woeful, as you said. Yeah, made landfall over Okinawa.
It's in the process of doing that just now.
Mm.
And people were talking about earlier on how it's tried to have this massive eye. It was never an eye, but it was trying to do. It was trying to do that, and it would have been a crazy sized eye. It's bigger than... What's it bigger than? It's almost as big as the whole island of Kyushu.
Wow. Yeah, that is quite a big eye there. And yeah, so then and then I go to work this morning, having just Bonnie in the Atlantic, and then I come home, and then Colin's here now as well. Which they took so long to name Bonnie, but here's Colin just...
Yeah, just like that.
All the difference is, I guess, is because Colin is, I don't know, up the eastern seaboard.
Oh yeah, when the US East Coast is involved, they are very trigger happy.
Yeah.
It's a very much more higher importance region. I don't want to trigger anyone, but that's kind of how it is right now, so...
But it is, and this is what you would expect from an American agency.
I mean,
Like,
that's
say
the
if something came over.
Just like if it was Nicaragua running the National Hurricane or the RSMC in the Atlantic, you'd have the Bonnie name probably a few days before,
I mean,
or
what if it was run by the
Venezuela or
Portuguese?
Colombia or whatever.
Yeah.
I,
Like I said, what if it was run? What if the NHC was run by the Portuguese? You'd find a lot more name storms over on the Eastern Atlantic.
oh God, I don't think it'd be that bad, but anyway.
All
But,
true.
yeah.
However, you see the common consensus among, say, let's just say the lesser informed of our community, saying that the NHC is compared to other RSMC is a lot better, a lot more less biased, a lot more, a lot more a bit of the best. But that's not really true. It's not that simple. It's not that easy to say. All agencies have their own biases. All agencies have their own inadequacies, and I suppose what has happened over the last week is a great showing of that, at least for the NHC side of things.
The National Hurricane Centre have the best tools. I think it's a little bit unfair to talk about bias at this point in time, but I understand what you're saying. Let's try and get some. I'm going to try and capture, see if there's a image or a satellite area that we can see both storms on, but I don't think there is. So let's try and get some more imagery of Bonnie back on the mesoscale. Once again, that's Colin on the screen over the last few hours, and this here, there we go, we've got some sandwich imagery of Bonnie. To be honest, if we were a bit more organised today, we'd probably throw all of these storm images up on the screen, all 4 storms in real time, but we'll just go from one to the next. And if you do have any, we're sort of going to be viewer-led in our conversation, so if you've got any comments or questions about any of the storms, Christian, what's going on, man? Then we will ensure that, well, we'll just follow how it goes. So, a question there from Z3 or Threen. Why is or was Irie's eye so big? And that's the thing, it wasn't really an eye, but it would have been if it tried to do it. And it was just being twisted round and about and all around and upside down by wind shear, I think.
As I understand it, for storms of this threat in this kind of situation, an eye is not exactly really a possibility. It would look like it's gonna be an eye due to the various forces that is working against it, but it would never really become an eye. It's sort of just a mass of clouds being twisted and turn and twist over and over again in just a huge mess that is just an absolute eyesore to see.
Another question there about whether JMA has Chaba as a typhoon. You don't know?
No, not really.
They don't right now. It's a severe tropical storm, and I imagine that they've kept it like that the whole time.
Oh, that wouldn't be too surprising.
Yep. So I don't think they called it a typhoon at any point, but I wasn't actually looking when it was stronger earlier on, so, but I doubt they would have called it a typhoon.
Unfortunate thing is, of course, is because even though the storm is for West standard is relatively weak, it is still capable of tragedies, of causing tragedies and calamities, such as the main headline is, of course, there is a ship about 200 kilometers south of Hong Kong that is reported to have broken in two, with its 24 crew reportedly jumping overboard to escape the ship. So far that I've seen, about 3 or 4 has been rescued by the Coast Guard, with the rest still being missing. So even though it doesn't seem like much, it is still very much capable of causing tragedies and calamities.
The wind field of Chaba is massive, by the way. I'm just going to try and get... Have we got the JTWC cone? And that'll give you a little depiction of... there we are. The wind field that it's showing there. Absolutely enormous when you look at that. Tropical storm force winds according to JTWC. Let me just try and get the figures. Obviously it's very easy to see graphically there with those big radial dials showing how large those wind fields are. Yep, so actually not as large as I thought looking at this, but at the moment it's... Oh, what time is that as of? Oh, this is a new update from 15Z that's just come out, and they've put it down to 50 knots, which is 60 miles per hour. Here's the old advisory on the screen. So they've brought that wind field down to 150 nautical miles on the northeast quadrant, 165 on the southeast, 130 on the southwest, 100 on the northwest. And that's some way after landfall. I'm going to have to try and get... I'm just going to try and go back to try and find the what the wind field used to be. But that'll take a little while, so discuss amongst yourselves. Farhan, were you impressed by the amount that the storm managed to strengthen before it reached land? Because there was some... much earlier on in the storm's life, there were big question marks about how strong it would actually try and get.
To be perfectly honest with you, as someone who has perused through the countless storm pages on Wikipedia, no, not really. It's not exactly impressive. In fact, if you look at it from a historical standpoint for the Western Pacific, it's actually quite weak. I mean, we have seen things like what is an example of a storm that rapidly intensified the South China Sea?
A little bit early, though, for the season.
But in terms of the Western Pacific, which is basically the basin where everything and anything goes, it's not exactly impressive. It's not exactly making my jaws drop or something. I mean, for how early it is in the season relatively, yeah, but in terms of intensity and intensification and organization, no, not really, considering how wild the Western Pacific can be historically.
All right, we'll get some more questions here. What are our predictions for later on in the season when we have long track storms? Well, where? I mean, the Western Pacific could go absolutely loopy late on this year. That's what climatological models have been suggesting for quite some time. The Atlantic, we know, is probably going to get some decent action. East Pacific is not going to really have any long tracking storms as far as we can see, because the conditions there are dire. In the Atlantic, I'll have to refer back to my predictions again, which was supposed to be updating. Why does Aere have so little convection associated with it, is another question we've received there. Let's try and get that imagery right now. I know it's lurking around here somewhere. This one, there it is. There's a close-up on Aere right now, and it looks really terrible as it moves across Okinawa and the Amami Islands of Japan. Very, very poor indeed. Is that due to a lack of energy underneath in the oceans, which I doubt, because SSTs should be decent. So what is it, Farhan? Is it moisture?
Atmospheric conditions, yes. A bit of shear, and the third, it hasn't been exactly cooperating. In fact, some have said that it's amazing how the storm has managed to get to this level at all, considering of how unfavorable the atmospheric conditions is, which I suppose is a good thing, because that means for the people of Okinawa, it's pretty much just nothing more than a bit of a breeze and a bit of a cool rain and wind to give them a bit of respite from the current heat wave.
Well, considering that Okinawa is used to probably a Category 5 every 2 or 3 years, then yeah, it is pretty much a breeze for them. I'm sure they know how to prepare for the most severe conditions. They get slammed all the time by very intense typhoons. Pretty bad location situation in the Western Pacific for that area. Some more comments now. Is Bonnie over the Pacific Ocean? It is by this point, yes. It is now in the Eastern Pacific. Just for those
About
who
that,
just for those who are unaware or maybe 20 years late in reading up, they don't get an extra name. They don't change their names to the Eastern Pacific next name. It will stay as Bonnie. Although I do believe they've reclassified the number to 4E. Not confirmed that yet, but I do believe that's happened, and that's somewhat surprised me because I didn't know that they did that. Because if they don't change the name, you'd imagine they wouldn't change the number, but there we have it.
the interesting thing about that is there's of course a bit of contention among the historical analysis community about what counts as a crossover in this region of the world. Some people think this is the first crossover storm from the Pacific into the Atlantic into the Pacific since Ottawa 2016. Which, if it holds and if it continues to remain a tropical cyclone, it is very much a possibility. Though some people think that it is the first intra-basin crossover ever, because of course the status of Amanda Cristobal of 2020 is a bit contentious of whether is it really a crossover or is it just one system dying and then the remnants forming another storm.
Sure.
But depending how you look at it,
This can't be the first one ever, though, can it?
No, I mean, it is the first time in a while, but how
Yeah.
long of a while, that depends on what is your definition of a crossover.
Yeah, well, I think Otto did it. It wasn't much of a crossover, but it was. This is the first, what I would define, impressive crossover, because, you can't rob Otto of its status. The first impressive crossover storm since Cesar Douglas 26 years ago. So, yeah, it's quite impressive. And a lot of comparisons to that storm. I think, in terms of track, it's much more close to Irene Olivia, although that storm was quite a bit stronger.
Quite a bit stronger indeed.
Yeah. But there is Bonnie, and most of the eastern side of Nicaragua and Costa Rica now looking to be out of the woods with the storm. I imagine that very soon they'll release those tropical storm warnings for the east coast, which are still in effect. On the west coast, though, they're still very much under the influence of the storm, which the centre there is a little bit to the west of the convective big blob that's residing on the eastern side of the centre. I think the centre is somewhere near where that little blob is starting to blow up, trying to wrap around perhaps the southern side of the centre, if you can see it. I can't annotate on this, so it's just going to try and explain. And then you've got that other big blob of convection on the northwestern side, which isn't anywhere near the centre, but that is producing the highest cloud tops right now, so that also is noteworthy. More discussions here and comments. Could the disturbance in the Atlantic become the next named storm? 10% chance. I don't think so, but it was looking fairly decent. But it's just going to be a wave. Is Bonnie decreasing its speed movement? I don't actually have the answer for that. Right now, National Hurricane Center have it moving at 14 miles per hour, so I think it stayed roughly the same.
I mean, considering that it's crossing over the part of Central America that is relatively narrow, it shouldn't really hamper it too much. It's not like it's crossing over Mexico where there's mountains and terrain that could severely hamper it. I mean, yeah, there are some mountains down there in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, but it's nowhere near as big as the ones up north. So I don't think it should be that big of an obstacle. So it perhaps slowed down a little bit, but not that much.
Here's Colin again. You can see the progression of Colin over the last few hours here. Let's go back to a more high quality image. Here it is. So you can see the progress of good old Colin there, which, just like 6 years ago when the name was last used, has got circulation difficulties.
Questionable, I would like to say.
Very questionable. Nonetheless, we run with it with the tropical storm warnings that are currently in effect and should be heeded, regardless of how poor the storm looks. They are still legitimate warnings. South Santee River to Duck, North Carolina, and the Pamlico Sound, tropical storm warning. National Hurricane Center are expecting tropical storm conditions within the warning area this morning and will spread northward to North Carolina this afternoon through Sunday. And locally heavy rainfall, an additional 1 to 2 inches with isolated amounts of 4 is expected. Localized areas of flash flooding, and they'll have a new update on this storm in an hour and a half, just like with Bonnie. Just misread something there. Some more comments here. There's a comment relating to that. How did Colin form faster than the Bonnie? Said David. I like how you call it the Bonnie. The Colin formed quicker, probably just because it was along the coast of the US and NHC had to pull the trigger.
Well, that's the simplest explanation, right?
Although Bonnie did lack a circulation for a very long time, only until Recon could find it, and they were going in all the time as well, so it didn't get designated late, Bonnie. It was just really close to tropical cyclone status for a long time without actually getting there. Christian, anything for us right now?
Well, we've actually had some satellite imagery of Bonnie provided to us by Greg. It's just the site has a few troubles loading at the minute.
Where is it?
I posted it in the live discussion room, so it should just be there. However, yeah,
I can't
I've
get
had
onto
some
that.
troubles.
Can you show us?
Well, I'm trying to, but the site's having trouble loading for me.
Oh, well, I doubt it would work here either then. But if you can get it up on a screen share, just let me know and we'll be able to take a little look at it.
Will do.
What are the highest rainfall right now in or near Typhoon Chaba? Good question. And we'll be able to get some answers for you shortly. I'll leave you with this satellite imagery of the storm just for a minute whilst I try and take a look. I'm just trying to remember where to look exactly. There are a few satellite rainfall products that not only give you the real time but also an estimated rainfall total. Now, I know it's not the most accurate thing unless we can get some observations from China, but I don't have them at my fingertips at the moment. So I'm just going to take a look and see if we can find out. Trying to remember which option it is on what I'm looking at here. So I'll be a couple of minutes trying to find that. In the meantime, you can keep looking at that imagery and how that storm has been faring as it's moved inland. Convection starting to die off a little bit. Southern side of the storm, southwestern side still blowing up some decent cloud tops.
Just want to point out, I think Farron's got the site up and running.
Oh, you're on that. I've seen that one before as well. Yeah, on the Managua radar, I believe that is. Yep. So there's a decent look at Bonnie. What can you tell us from the radar, Farhan?
Well, the center is definitely offshore, and that the rain band is moving away. Well, at least it is. It would be. I would presume it's not exactly cooperating with me. It doesn't really want to play a loop. But the image this is from 5 minutes ago. It is moving. The brunt of the rain, the rain formation is still over land. It is currently moving towards the west coast of the country. It is slowly creeping towards the sea, but the storm is slowly moving offshore. And from what we can see here, its structure is still relatively good, relatively speaking. Whether this will hold or not is, of course, subject to time to see how it will go over the next 6 to 12 hours. But for the time being, it's not too bad.
I've lost where I find all this rainfall total data. I'm at a loss right now. I'm rooting through everything trying to find it again. But in the meantime, we've got that imagery in front of us with what's happened with Bonnie. Flash flooding, landslides, all very likely to have occurred. And I know that we have, or we had last night on our tropical weather bulletin, we had Luis with us, and he is in Nicaragua as well. Hopefully we'll get to hear from him fairly soon.
Oops, right there. Yeah, the site is not exactly cooperating with me in terms of making loops. Well, everyone has a good look at it.
Let's go back to this imagery of Chaba. I'm really wanting to take a look at this, these rainfall estimates, so I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try and find it, because I think it's important. I just don't know where it's gone. But what I can tell you from the models is that we are still expecting another well more than 10 inches of rain still to come, possibly reaching 15 to 20, up to 500 millimeters was forecasted. I can't understand why I can't find this rain thing, because I know it's here. Looking through a list of things. Okay. Let's take a look at something else. Let's try and get some more imagery, and back to Bonnie once again there. And again, you can see that it's progressing fairly well. It's still got a decent future ahead of it in the Eastern Pacific, although how much of one is a bit of a question mark, considering just how poor the Eastern Pacific is at the moment.
Interesting pictures that I found on Twitter is pictures of the local authorities from what I seem to be the eastern coast of the country started doing some recovery efforts, some clearing of debris. I'm not sure where in this description is the name of the place. I can't read Spanish, but you can see here you have rescue workers and probably firefighters cleaning the roads from fallen trees. You can see here they are in the process of cutting one big branch of the tree along which leads to clear the part of the road. And this is a close-up of the first image. just cleaning the fallen trees and vegetation that have fallen into the road, and probably checking on some of slight level of flooding within the area.
It says there San Juan del Sur, which is is on the western coast, very close to the border with Costa Rica.
The east, because there doesn't seem to be any rain falling. I guess that's it's this picture. This place is in a bit of a pocket where there is no rain, because it doesn't seem to be any falling into the road.
Interesting. That must be a very recent image as well.
Yeah, presumably it's from it's this morning, so it's morning over there right now. So that the authorities and recovery workers started to mobilize to start their plan action post-storm operations, rescue work, recovery works, all the works when it comes to these things.
I think I'm having to give up on trying to find this rain amount. It's been bugging me this whole time. I just can't find it. But if there's any observations from China, I know we have a bit of a Chinese community here as well. If any of them could let me know if they've got any numbers, that would be... Oh, actually, I have found something. It's not what I was looking for, but there's been... Oh, actually, that's out of date, so that's no use to us either. But yeah, general gist for Chaba is potentially up to 20 inches of rainfall. Let's take a look at some more comments and questions. Start your message with Force 13, all in text. Let's see. Can Bonnie affect El Salvador? Well, let's go back to the National Hurricane Center forecast map. There's Colin, and there's Bonnie. And you'll see there, don't forget, the center of the storm can track anywhere within that cone. For El Salvador, though, it's not going to happen for a landfall, but there could still be heavy rainfall, which could reach up to around 150 millimeters, even higher in some isolated locations from the outer edges of Bonnie. So that's from El Salvador's point of view. There's definitely going to be some rain there. What is that? Will Bonnie have to be Derby, or will it have the same name? It's definitely having the same name. There's none of that going on.
Gone away with changing names when it crosses over. They've gone away with that.
Yeah, and there was a awful comment before from Julius Nepos saying, Bonnie singing Total Eclipse of the Heart and Colin with In the Air Tonight. What?
Oh dear.
Oh, I mean, I know the storm is not exactly eye candy, but it's no joking matter. It's still a force of nature that could kill people and cause property damage. So as much as it is fun to make fun of ugly storms that has been frustrating, I don't think it's really an appropriate thing to do, especially with these two storms, or really all the storms on discussion tonight, because they're all affecting land right now.
And that is an interesting part of this right now. I don't think I've ever witnessed something so early in the season where we've had 4 coastal storms at the same time. Really gives me unpleasant flashbacks to September 2018 when we had 7 storms that had land in the 5-day forecast at the same time, which was quite incredible. So a really active period in the tropics that we're looking over right now.
Oh, we shall see if it continues, I suppose. Hopefully not, but you never know.
In a moment, it'll be 10-2, so we'll do our models segment and take a look at what the GFS has to serve us over the next 16 days. We'll look all the way up to the Scilly range just to give people a laugh. But generally, we'll be looking at what's going on in the short term, because that's much more important. so we'll be able to look at that shortly. But in the meantime, we're here to serve. Please send your questions in, and we'll do our best to answer to the best of our ability. Let's take a look back at... Oh, here's some more imagery across the Eastern Pacific right now. Just another little angle on what's been going on with Bonnie. And when you do look at this very large scale format, you start to appreciate how small Bonnie actually is. It is a fairly small storm, and that trend is likely to continue at least for the next 5 days, when the National Hurricane Center expects it will become a hurricane, and then maybe as it starts to gain some more latitude it will start to increase in size and intensity initially, and then start to weaken. Hopefully though, it won't affect any more land areas. More comments. Hone will not exist apparently, and how much rainfall do we expect from Chaba? Yeah, so I can tell you expectations from this point in were most of the area that Chaba's affecting will deliver at least probably 10 inches of rainfall, 250 millimeters. It's quite a lot, but that is what we're expecting. There it is right now.
It could be argued that some places have already reached that now, considering how this storm has been over the area for the past day or so. That is very much possible.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm just going to try and find another source of imagery for rainfall and see if I could just give people a little flavour of how much rain might have been received in those areas. It's a pain trying to find what we're looking for here. Let's try this. Just looking here. Oh no, that's well out of date. Some of them are terribly out of date as well, some of the sources for the rainfall.
Oh dear.
Yes?
There is a bot. There's a bot in the YouTube chat, Nathan.
I'm up.
There's a spam bot, there you go.
Yeah, well, you know, that I thought something terrible had happened there. That happens all the time. There's nothing we can do about YouTube bots, apart from get rid of them when they appear.
Annoying.
More comments. Are there no expected systems for the Westpac this coming week? I'll show you in a moment. How did Colin form in 1 day? Even the National Hurricane Center acknowledged that it was not expected. Where's the Colin imagery gone now? Tripping over myself with all this imagery. Yep, there it is once again. You see the circulation. You can see the rotation, but circulation, I'm just not convinced by it at this point. And I'm not convinced by what it looked like earlier, although it was a little bit better. But it had that circulation. What we first saw was a little spin, a little spinny thing basically that formed yesterday evening just before sunset, and it was just about paralleling the coast near Charleston. The convective pattern was terrible back then, and then it was starting to blow up a lot down the south and the eastern sides, to the point where it was starting to get borderline for becoming a tropical storm. NHC designated it, and that not much has happened since then, and we're here with it now. Tropical storm warnings still in effect for that whole region.
Yeah, I mean, with Colin, I can sort of see rotation, but it's not exactly the greatest, I'll put it that way.
I'm still just trying to find... This is really annoying me now, this rainfall stuff, but I haven't found anything that currently works. I can tell you the current rain rates, satellite estimated rain rates inside Chaba right now. And it is over Maoming right now, actually, particularly. At least 30 millimeters per hour occurring there, so there could be a flash flooding event in Maoming in China. a significant city, I believe, just by the fact that it shows up on the map along with all the other large cities in China.
Well, considering it's the Pearl River Delta, almost all city in that region is a significant city. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a significant storm infecting a significant area.
All right then, let's see if we can take a look at models now. We need to have some kind of funny name for the model section. Something like Model Mouth or something. I don't know.
We'll find. We'd figure something out.
Right, let's begin with Colin, which is marked by all these red dots, which I can't turn off because it's a glitch with WSV3 on the radar, which obviously you can't see. So we start to play this along, and you can see some of Colin. Well, no, you can't really see any of Colin. And whatever it ends up of it turns into this massive long frontal system off the east coast of the Atlantic. And probably some of Colin's energy becomes this extratropical cyclone in a few days, which will then saunter off towards Iceland. So that's probably the remnants of Colin there, hitting Iceland as a much more impressive extratropical cyclone.
The Colin name is just cursed.
Further south,
It is.
Bolin. I called it Bolin. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Boys. Anyhow, let's move that along.
Tropical Storm Bonnie.
You could have done Collie.
Tropical Storm Bonnie. I nearly did it again. Moving over Lake Nicaragua there on the GFS run. We'll come to that in a minute, but let's look at the Atlantic once again for the longer range. Anything happening there? No, that's good. Look to the Eastern Pacific. Bonnie there, remaining fairly small. Let's just play it out slowly. So we follow Bonnie. Moves fairly quickly as it goes along there, getting to hurricane status, moving along the power line of the coast of Mexico at a fairly safe distance, growing in size later on. GFS, very long range now, becomes a significant Category 2, maybe even Category 3 hurricane, and does take it on a path that goes on for quite a way before it finally loses tropical storm winds. There it is, and eventually its remnants end up somewhere near Hawaii.
It is long range now, so don't take it at
Yeah,
face
that is
value.
long range.
Behind that, GFS thinks that on the 10th of July, which is also long range, 8 days out, another system forms, an extremely large one compared to Bonnie, and also becomes a hurricane. It's July, that is certainly well within the realms of possibility in the Eastern Pacific. Shouldn't affect any land areas. Alright, so I think the most interesting part will be the Western Pacific, especially with what we saw last night. Chaba there, making landfall, moving inland, dies off very quickly. Aere also doing the same, dying off very quickly, and actually the latest GFS suggesting that it will stay in the East China Sea and approach northeastern China later on. So Japan completely out of it by the looks of things, the main islands. Looking up there, just east of Japan there, little system, that's extratropical. Let's look into long range. What do we have next? There's a new cyclone forming over the Mariana Islands. That is on day 8, maybe day 7. So that's too far out. Look how it explosively intensifies though. My goodness, this is the GFS. It underestimates some quite often. And that is showing a Category 4. But honestly, looking at that, that's probably a Category 5. But that is very long. Look where it goes. Very long range.
my.
It was saying something completely different last night. Don't read into that. Very worst case scenario, you could see a big Taiwan/Japan landfall on the 16th of July, but it's way out, way out. Behind that, there's another system that forms. Where did that go? There it is, way out over the Western Pacific Ocean. Also becomes a major typhoon out to sea. So that might be an interesting July if that happens, but at the moment, not a shred of evidence that we're seeing something like that. Indian Ocean, you can see the usual pattern that we have in the summertime. Very strong winds over the Arabian Sea. Happens all the time with the pattern that they get there. South Indian Ocean, not much going on there. Australia, nothing. South Pacific, nothing. That's pretty much your model update. Let's just have a look, and we'll make it quick by just taking a look at the precipitation marker for day 7 to show you how much rainfall will have fallen in that time period. First, the Colin area. Maximum precipitation amounts in North Carolina there, let's see, 4 inches. And what area is that? Just between, well, Fayetteville particularly actually, towards Wilmington but not including. Around 4 inches your maximums there from Colin. Looking south, the Bonnie areas. This is still forecasted, so this is on top of current rainfall. And they're still saying 10 inches for a couple of areas of Nicaragua and even into Honduras. This may not necessarily be from Bonnie, but another system maybe, the other one that maybe we're tracking. But massive amounts of rain there. It's going to be a bit of a flooding problem for Nicaragua as a whole there, especially to the west, the east. The western side is mainly to do with Bonnie, 7 or 8 inches there. And there you can see sort of the track of Bonnie reflected in that forecast. Out to sea, quite a lot of rainfall. Some areas, El Salvador actually doesn't look so bad. It's Mexico mainly now, and maybe westernmost Guatemala, up to around 8 inches in a couple of isolated spots along the coast. 6 inches, 5 or 6. So not an enormous event, but still something that could cause localized flash flooding. Hawaii there, pretty dry over the next 7 days, and this is the Pacific over that, Western Pacific over that time. So Chaba, we could still see an extra 17 inches, 18 inches of rain over an isolated spot near the center of the storm right now, near Maoming. And all this red zone here over a large swathe of China, that's 10 to 12 further inches of rainfall. The yellow areas, even that is still 3 and 4 inches and more. Large areas that we're looking at there, populations of over 60 million in probably in 10-inch rains, or not 10-inch, maybe 5-inch rains or higher. And we're probably still looking at least 30 million in 10-inch rains or higher. Taiwan, they're going to get a soaking as well there, 9-10 inches. The Aere areas, around 4 inches in Okinawa. Rainfall maybe not exactly associated with Aere itself, but behind it, some stuff, frontal stuff, delivering maybe 7 inches of rain to parts of Japan in the next 7 days as well. So that's pretty much everything sorted there. Any comments from the team on any of that, because we are just about finished with our hour here?
It's an interesting time that how so early in the northern hemisphere season we had 4 storm in as you said, 4 storm in coastal areas, but none of them are particularly impressive, especially Colin. But yeah, it's an interesting time. Let's see if things will continue to be like this in the future or not.
Christian?
I don't really have any closing thoughts at the minute, to be honest. Apart from those in the path of the storms that we've covered, make sure to keep an eye on your local weather station, follow instructions, and above all, stay safe.
Jose, how about you?
Nothing much. Just
Alright.
very.
No
It's very like surprising to see like. Well, I think it's like it's a normal to see like some tropical development happening. So surprising.
And Declan, you were with us as well this hour. Any closing thoughts?
Well, Well, the rainfall can be pretty dangerous, but anyone who's in the path of these systems just stay safe and don't go outside until till the storm has finished.
Now, with red typhoon warnings in effect, that is very true for those areas underneath Typhoon Chaba right now, and its fairly large influence. Thank you to my team for covering this once again for another hour. Hopefully it's been an informative one, a useful one. We'll be back with another live event on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin Live, which will be at 8 AM Hong Kong time, 8 PM US East Coast. And we'll have more updates on all of these storms throughout the day today in our regularly packaged small storm update videos. In the meantime, you can join the discussion on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13. Until then, we'll see you again soon. Have a good day.